right. So we're working in week 2 on typography class, and we have project 2, which is called type arrangements. And this actually comes from your book. It's not going to be identical to what's in the book, but it'll be close. This is found on page 108 in your Designing with Type book, which is that blue book. And what we're going to do, it shows an example on the bottom bottom left of page 108. It shows an example of one person's spin on setting Helvetica in random ways, and that's what we're doing for the Helvetica part. That's the last part of it. So that's setting Helvetica in very random sort of fashion. You notice that none of the type is lined up at all, we're not going to have any alignment there. But on page 109, you have examples of Garamond, Baskerville, Bodoni, and Century Expanded. They're all set, or maybe it's just Garamond. No, Garamond, Baskerville, Bodoni, and Century Expanded. They're all set with specific alignments, specific point sizes of type, specific point sizes of leading, and probably even the column width or the line length. Oh yeah, they want it, some of them justified, flush left, rag right, and so on. So we're going to talk about how to deal with these kind of alignments. That will all be on one page. Garamond, Baskerville, Bodoni, Century Expanded. Those are all going to be on one page. It's not going to be the copy that's in here. I have provided you with text. It's about NASA, the space place, the space program. Okay, so we're going to use different text than what is in the book for the first 4 parts of this, for Garamond, Baskerville, Bodoni, and Century Expanded. We're also going to create 2 different InDesign documents. One will be for the first 4 typefaces, and then a second document will be for the Helvetica because they're different sizes. Now what you guys will need to do, these are the same fonts, by the way, that we used on Project 1. You don't really need to download those fonts unless you haven't loaded them in suitcases. But in suitcases, I just brought it back up from last week. In suitcases, I have Baskerville, Bodoni, Century Expanded, Helvetica, and Garamond loaded. They're just not activated. So the first order of business is to, if the fonts aren't loaded, drag them over there. Download them and drag them in there into this area. Then, but if they're already there from last time, which they should be, might have to click on Project 1 fonts if you create a set. Click on them, hold down the Shift key, and then hit Command. On a Mac, it's Command O for open, not 0 the number, but the letter O. And you'll see that it's activating them right now, and it puts little blue dots next to them. The blue dots indicate that these fonts are not only loaded, but they're also active and ready to use in the software. So step 1 is load fonts if they're not loaded, but if they're already loaded, activate them. All right, so activate all your fonts because these are the ones we're using. Make sure you're using the ones with the STD at the end. There's probably 3 or 4 Helveticas already loaded in InDesign. We want to use the one with the STD. All right, so back to Blackboard. So I don't necessarily have to download the font files because they're the same ones we used last week, but they're there in the event that you needed to download them at home. I do have a second attachment here. It says Text for Project 2, NASA document. You want to right-click on that and save the link as, leave it as his name, but create a folder while you're saving this link. If you don't see the desktop here, it just says something like Documents, like this. You want to go ahead and choose the desktop. If you want to see the whole desktop, click on the arrow and you'll see the whole desktop. Now, if you already did that last week, it should already still be like this. So I'm clicking on desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder, and it's going to be called Rebecca Bilbrey Project 2. Now you, of course, would name it your name and Project 2. And I'm going to save that text inside that folder. Now, I did not typeset the Helvetica text. You know how sometimes I typeset part of the stuff for you, but not all of it? This is another case. Helvetica will be using, the Helvetica poster will be using different text. It is found on page, well, you can see it right there on page 108. But it's probably also found somewhere in like page 52, I would imagine, is where they got that. So if you want to see it better, The Helvetica text is found on page 52. You already have that anyway. You typeset it for last week's assignment. Yay! We're going to use that same text. So if you remember that Microsoft Word document that you used last week to deal with Helvetica, well, you can use that again. All right, so I downloaded the text for this. Now we're going to minimize. I'm going to minimize Blackboard, and I'm going to open InDesign. Now, as far as I know, I don't think we can do two different size documents within one InDesign file. So we're going to create two different InDesign documents. When you have the welcome window comes up, if you have this, there is the new column. You want to click on print document. If that's not available, it's turned off, maybe you closed it out, you would hit Command N or File New Document. You can see there the keyboard shortcut is Command N. Now we do not want to make a book, so turn facing pages off, please. Do that. Try to get in the habit of doing that unless you're doing a book. And this is a letter size document, which an 8.5 by 11 inch document converts to 51 picas by 66 picas. Well, how nice. That's because there's 6 picas in an inch. The number of columns, it looks like we need a couple of columns. Now this is kind of, since we have different column widths or different widths of text boxes, I'm actually going to not create columns. I know I said 2 columns is what it looks like in the book, but we will, because these arrangements are different widths, each text box is a different width, I'm just going to leave this as 1 column. And the margins is 1/2 inch is fine. 1/2 inch is 3 picas. Since there's 6 picas in an inch, 3 picas is 1/2 inch. So right now, the only thing we really changed here was we turned off facing pages. That's all we needed on this. Hit OK, and we've got us a nice InDesign 8.5 by 11 with 1/2 inch margins. Now, again, you guys can use your text that you created last time. All right. Now they are using the same. They're using Garamond for everything, which is not what really should be happening. The first text box should be set in Garamond, and I would use the text that you used from Garamond from the last project. The second one is set using Baskerville, so shouldn't we use the Baskerville type for that? So even though the book has Garamond, the text for the font Garamond, that's kind of wrong. So what you want to do is for the Garamond paragraph, set it in Garamond. For the Baskerville, set it in Baskerville, and so on. Use the actual type that we find on pages 28, 34, 40, 46, and 32. All right, now I do have the Garamond one ready. So I'm going to place it, but I need to go find it. It was in last week's stuff. So I am going to find my Garamond text and copy it and paste it into my Project 2 folder. So let me find Project 2. There it is. And I'm going to paste it. Now you guys probably want to go ahead and grab your Baskerville, your Bodoni, your Century Expanded, and your Helvetica from last week. Okay, so copy those into that. I unfortunately don't have all of those. Now, for Garamond, it's telling us in the book that it needs to be set justified. It needs to be set 11/15. This is what I'm going to type in here. I would like you to do this as well. We're going to create a text box. Just a small text box. I'm going to zoom in. So you use the type tool and you just click and drag a text box. And we're going to type in exactly what it says. Justified, Garamond, 11/15 by 13p, 13 picas. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and set that in Garamond just because Minion Pro is not what we're using here. Now, as I type in Garamond, it only goes to, it automatically will go to any old Garamond. Well, that's not the correct Garamond. I need to choose ITC Garamond STD. Okay, ITC stands for International Typeface Corporation. They're putting their brand on there. Line of Type also makes fonts, so does Adobe, so does Agfa. Monotype does. There's all sorts of different places that make type. Okay, I don't care what size that is, okay? That's just an identifier. So that is not shown in the book. Also, while we're in this text box, make sure all this text is highlighted, we're going to underline this text. And the quickest way to underline text is not to draw a line with the line tool. There's a line tool right here. But we don't do that. We just click up here in the control panel, assuming you're in the character formatting controls, which is the A. Click on the little T, the uppercase T, and it's got a little underline underneath it. Bam, it's underlined. There we go. So this is just identifying this paragraph as a justified paragraph set in Garamond 11/15 at 13 picas. Okay, that's... Oh, and while we're here too, why don't we go ahead and draw a separate text box up here near the upper right-hand corner, and let's put our name in there. I don't care what typeface. You can use any typeface you want. So your name needs to be in the upper left-hand corner, or right-hand corner, rather, of the document. And get it kind of close to the margin, but not, the pink line. It needs to be outside the pink line. Now, what I would also recommend doing is after you do a few things that you save the document. I haven't saved it yet, so I'm going to go to Save or Save As, and I'm going to title this Project 2. Doesn't even have to have your first and last name because it's already going to be in a folder. So we got to go find a folder, and I'm looking for my Project 2 folder. Oh, you know what? Project 2 Part 1, because there's 2 parts, sorry. Project 2 Part 1, and it goes into my Project 2 folder. Save it. It opened it, it saved it. Is everybody doing okay? All right. Now, because I like to be more efficient, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this text box and paste it a few times, and I'm going to type into it whatever it says in the book. Like one will be flush left, drag right, and so on. So here's the key to copy and paste. Here's what some people do. They will click on something, and they'll go to Edit and Copy, and they'll go to Edit and Paste, and it will just paste it any old place. But you guys probably want to work a little quicker than that. Even if you did a Command-C for copy and a Command-V for paste, it puts it any old place it wants to. So here's how you copy and paste and have control. Does anybody know how to do this? Has anybody done this before? Copied and paste without hitting Command-C and Command-V? Maybe? No? Well, on a PC and on a Mac, you have an Alt key. On the Mac, it's also got the word Option on it. So I'll say Alt-Drag because it works for both Mac and PC, but it's really Option. You'll see an Option and Alt key. It's next to the Command key. But if I Alt-Drag this, I can copy and paste it several times and control exactly where it's positioned. No longer do you need to hit Command-C, Command-V, or on a PC, Control-C, Control-V. Illustrator, it's Alt-Drag. InDesign, it's Alt-Drag. Photoshop, another story probably. Now what I'm going to do with these is I am going to type in here the next thing that's in the list on page 108. So the first one said justified. The next one says flush left, oops, ragged right. Gosh, I don't want to type that in. That's too long. You know how we indicate it in the real world? Forget all that. Here's what we do. We FL, then the backslash RR. Flush left, ragged right. I don't have all day to write that out, and I don't have all day to type it. So in the real world, this is how we write it out if we indicate it if we're trying to communicate with a graphics person what to do. Or if an editor tells you, hey, we need this flush left, ragged right, they'll put FL, then the dash, or forward slash, and then RR. Now this is going to be 11/13 Baskerville, whoops, and it's going to be Oh, excuse me, I should say Baskerville 11 or 13. Font name of the typeface comes first, then the point size, then the leading, then the width of the text box. I should do it the way we do it in the real world. And it's supposed to be 20 picas. Jeez, so we say 20p. I know the book says it spells out picas, but this is how we would do it in the real world because we don't, again, have all day to write everything out. Now I'm gonna highlight all this, 4 clicks, 3 clicks, whatever. And I'm gonna make this Baskerville because that's what it's supposed to be. So Baskerville, I guess Baskerville Cyrillic upright, that's fine. Just make sure it's Baskerville and it has an STD at the end and it's the one we loaded. So for us, it'll be Baskerville Cyrillic standard and it will be upright. All right. Now, the next one says it's flush right, ragged left. Now, I don't want to type that out. So it'll be flush right, FR for flush right, and then a forward slash, or backslash rather. Then RL for ragged left. Okay, now if it helps you understand better what this is, I suppose you could put in parentheses flush, you could spell it out. If that helps you out. And that's fine. Since we're new to this, and if your text box is too small and it gets a little red box, just click on one of those corners and make it bigger. Oh, and there's another trick too, which is really nice, which I need to implement better. We don't have all day. I want you guys to have a good quality of life. I was just clicking and dragging this little node to get the text to fit into that box. Does anybody know the shortcut for that? Instead of clicking and dragging, how do you get the box to conform to as much text as in there? Does anybody know? Oh my gosh, it's so quick. You guys want to know, don't you? Double click on the corner node and bam! It automatically makes the box as big and wide as your type. Isn't that wonderful? You guys don't have to click and drag whenever you have too much text in a box. So I'm going to put in here flush right, ragged left, and then I'm going to double click using the arrow tool, double click on the corner node, and it will make it as, I didn't want to go down the next line. Sometimes you do have to click and drag. So this flush left, ragged right stuff is supposed to be Bodoni, not Bodini, it's Bodoni. And they're telling us it's 12/16. And they're also telling us it's 18 picas wide. Now again, if I hit the escape key, by the way, it will get the black arrow tool. Then if I double click on that corner, any corner, it will make the text box as wide as the text. Isn't that just nice and clean? Nice and tidy. Oh, but this is still set in Garamond, so I need to make this Bodoni. I typed it all in, but forgot to tell it it's Bodoni, and it needs to be the STD Bodoni. So I'm going to go up here and find Bodoni. And this is probably just Bodoni book. That's the regular one. Now again, if I hit the escape key, it will give me the black arrow tool, and I can double click on the corner node, and it will conform that box to the type. Perfect. All right. The fourth one, we're setting the text not justified, but center aligned. So that's going to be centered. There's no shortcut for that, just the word centered. This is going to be century expanded. Oops. They want this to be, what do they want here? 10/16. 10 points of type, 16 points for the leading. And the width of the text box is going to be 24 picas. Now, while I'm here, I want to set this type as century expanded. So I need to highlight it all and change it from my Garamond or my Minion Pro or whatever. And you want century expanded. And looks like it's only given us italic or Roman. Oh, we want Roman. Then double click on that little node so it'll make the box the same size as the type. So tidy, so nice and neat and tidy. All right. So right now your InDesign document is just, it's got labels. Labels of what each paragraph is supposed to be. All right. So we're going to have to move these around. I'm going to move that kind of over off to the pasteboard because I need space to work. Okay. Now I did it the slow way. I drug each one over individually. That's the slow way. Here's the quick way. Make sure you're in the black arrow tool, and you want to click somewhere not on an object, but click in the white space and then drag and come in contact with the ones that you want to move. It's a contact sensitive tool. So whatever it came in contact with, it selected it, and now I can move them out of the way temporarily. So that's much more efficient than clicking and dragging each one.
Can you zoom in on them so I don't have the points?
Oh, sure, yeah. So here's what it all says. Garamon's 11 over 15, 13 pica. Baskerville's 11 over 13, 20 pica. Bodoni's 12 over 16 by 18 pica. Century Expanded is 10 over 16 by 24. Okay, any questions other than zoom in? Anybody? All right. All right, I think we're at a good point where we can take a break. Because I don't want to get into the next step and then have to take a break in the middle of it. So we're almost here an hour. I'm going to pause the recording here. I don't think I can pause it, so I'll just let it keep going. And I'll just edit that part out. So let's take a break. Come back in about 10 minutes. So that'd be about 25 after. And we'll pick back up on this, okay? Do save what you've done, though. That way you don't end up with having to do it again. So save it. Go out and smoke me a cigarette for me.
Okay.
Anybody smoking? Smoke me a cigarette. I'll smoke. It's so cool. A smoke break right now.
I saw a microwave. This is metal.
That'd be cool if they had some hot water spigot for tea and coffee and stuff.
I'll have to ask, because like I said, this is my first.
You might want to check in the bookstore because they have that hot coffee down there. I don't know if it has a hot spigot or not. Oh, we don't put the trash can in here because if we do, they want to do trash. So because they don't know the key codes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, my pretties, we are back from our break here. All right, so just a reminder, if your text boxes are kind of all over the place as far as, like they're really wide or too big for the text that's in them, like I'm creating this problem right now. If they're all out of control like this, whoops, I keep rotating it. What you want to do is grab that black arrow tool, the selection tool, and click on the text box and double click on the corner node. It really doesn't matter which node. Actually, it does. Corner node gives you both width and height. Double click on those corner nodes so that way, now if it will not assume you want this to all be one line, by the way. If you have type in 2 lines, go ahead and make that box wider, then double click on it. So you want those boxes to conform to basically the length of the text box in picas and the height of it in points. Okay, so just tidy it up a bit. And then we're going to move those off to the side. Are we all good now? Yes? Yes? No? Still working on it?
Extra care. That's
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and carry on. If you haven't got your things tightened up, just move it off to the side and we'll get to it later, okay? So we're going to move 3 of those off to the side, and we're going to just stick with using the Garamond one for now. And we're going to do exactly what this text is indicating. We want a justified alignment setting. We want to use Garamond 11/15 and 13 picas wide. So I'm going to get the type tool, and I'm going to create a text box, and I'm going to click and drag to do that. Now, you will notice when you click and drag, there is a width and a height next to the cursor as it's dragging. Now, I don't necessarily like to labor over this and try to make the width exactly 13 picas because, 1, it's hard to see those little letters, numbers. And 2, you might get real close to it, but it will fuss with you between like 12p11 and 13p1 or something. So what I'll do is I'll draw a text box. It doesn't matter how big it is or how wide it is, because I can tell in design, if I hit the escape key, this will get us the black arrow tool, the selection tool. I can tell it in the width field up here in this control panel. Again, this is with the escape key. It goes back to the black arrow tool. This box has to be selected for this to be affected. This width area, which is called the field, the width field, I can type in 13 there. I hit the tab key and it will move to the next field. And it will also, when I hit the tab key, it made that box 13 picas. Yay! So I have a 13 pica wide box. Text box, that is. Yes, Janice? Okay, let me take a look and see what's going on yours. If your box got really super skinny, I wonder. Oh, mine's skinny as well. It's just I'm zoomed out. As long as that says 13. Yep. Okay, because I'm zoomed in, I might look a little bit bigger than yours. So here we go. Pretty tiny. I like to zoom in because I have bad eyes. I'm getting, well, don't get old, folks. It sucks. So I zoom in a lot. Now, you'll notice, too, to make the layout tidy, I have pushed both this into basically the little label box. I've made sure that he aligns to the pink line, which is the margin, left margin. I also have made sure that my text box that I'm getting ready to put all that text in also aligns to that pink line. So you want to get things all tidied up because, well, in the world of graphics, whether it's web or print or whatever, everything needs to be nice and tidy and aligned. Now, if I'm in the selection tool, the black arrow tool, if I double click on this box, it automatically turns it into the type tool and the cursor is blinking. So you don't have to switch between tools. It's really nice. It does it for you if you double click on it with the black arrow tool. Now we're going to place some text. That text is, oh, you know what? What am I thinking? We're going to place the text that I gave to you. Here I did all that discussion about, oh, the Garamond text should be the Garamond stuff and blah, blah, blah. I have changed it up. I switched it up today, and I've given you text because I want to share with you a couple of typographic features here. You know what? Okay, hold on. Stop. I was ahead of myself. I was thinking of Project 3 when I gave you this text. Let me look and see what I've done here. Bad teacher. Okay, where it says text for Project 2 NASA, we are not using that. That's actually for Project 3. So I'm going to edit this and I'm going to delete that because we aren't using that for Project 2. I'm so sorry. Sorry for the confusion. Sometimes I get my head wrapped around a few things all at one time and then I get confused. So we are not going to use that text after all. So I'm going to go to my Project 2 folder and I'm going to get rid of that NASA text because we don't need it. That's for the next project. My apologies. I was working, in my head I was working ahead. All right, now we're going to place the Garamond text here. So we're going to use the text that we used last time in the assignment. So I go to File and Place. I don't copy and paste from Word. That is very, very bad form, very bad habit. File, Place, which is Command D on a Mac. It's Control D on a PC. And I am going to find my Garamond text, which is the Microsoft Word document. Now you should, again, have Microsoft Word documents from last week's assignment. I hit Open, and it automatically puts the Garamond text in there. Now we will have to delete the headlines. We don't need those. And don't widen the text box because it's already set at 13, but you can make the text box taller. Okay? It's supposed to be 13 inches wide. Now, that is the wrong font, so if I double click on there, it automatically turns to the type tool. And we know that 4 clicks in this case because it's one paragraph, 4 clicks is going to get us this entire paragraph. Or you can hit Command A to select all. So we've placed the text that's about Garamond, and we've selected it. And now we're going to do the type arrangement as it says here, which is justified. And it needs to be Garamond. So right now it's something else. So we're going to choose Garamond. Now the cool thing about InDesign is if we go to the type window and we click on the little arrow that is the drop-down menu, and then you may have to scroll up on here, it will show the most recent typefaces that you've chosen in the last couple of projects. So you'll notice that Century, Bodoni, Baskerville, and Garamond are already here. Now we're using the ITC Garamond standard, and we're using, was that the one? Yeah. And we're using, well, let's just say book. There we go. Now, it does tell us that this needs to be justified. With the text selected, which it already is, you can see the alignments palette up here in the control panel. The typographic control panel. There are several different alignments. The top left one is align left. The second one is centered. The third one is align right. The fourth one is align towards spine. That's for book stuff because we don't have a spine on this. The fifth one, which is the second column down, is or row down, is justify with the last line aligned left. So that's what they want. We want this one to be justified. The other one is justified, center align the last line, and the last one is justify all lines. Usually on justified settings, normally 99% of the time we use this first one, which is justified so that all lines are justified except the last one will be aligned to left, and it will have, if there's any extra words in there, it may, I'll go throw an extra word in here or two. This is it aligned to the left. It's not center aligned. Now, you will probably notice a few things here. I've zoomed in. Oh my gosh, look at how many hyphens there are. I even have stacked hyphens, which is the biggest no-no of graphics. I've got tons of hyphens. What do we do with those hyphens? Do we want hyphens?
No.
No, we want to kill them. And that's what it's called in the real world. Kill your hyphens. Now, you guys have a button over here towards the right that has hyphenate. You can turn it off or on. Mine, unfortunately, with the, my resolution of my monitor has to work with the overhead, so I don't have that button. So I'm going to click on the backwards P for paragraph, and I'm going to uncheck hyphenate. Now I have no hyphens. Now, the book does say to make this 11 points of type, 15 points of leading. So in the points field, the size of the type, for me it already says 11. If it doesn't, I'm going to choose 11. And for the leading, which is just underneath that, I'm going to choose 15. But in the flyout menu, there is no 15 available. So if that's the case, you would triple click inside the field of the leading number. 3 clicks will give you that whole number there, which right now is auto letting, so it gives you some crazy number. And you'll type in whatever letting amount is in there, 15. Then you hit the tab key and it will automatically stick. Now, unfortunately, that letting caused this text box to be so full that the text is overflowing. Now, if I double click on the center anchor point here, it will automatically extend that text box to accommodate the amount of text that needs to be in the story. Okay? So if I have a really short column or text box, and I know there's more type in there, and I don't want it to get any wider, I will double click on the bottom node and it will accommodate. How handy is that? All right, so I'm going to double check my work. I'm going to select all the text. I'm going to look to see if it's Garamond standard book. It is. I'm going to see if it's 11/15. It all says it is. And I'm going to make sure that it's 13 picas. I'm going to hit the escape key so I can get the black arrow tool. Escape gives me the black arrow tool and it tells me it's 13 picas. Now I'm going to save it. Now, the next setting is supposed to be, well, the setting we're going to go from left to right. It's supposed to be flush left, rag right, Baskerville. So I am going to move the label for that up near the upper right corner. Go ahead and snap it to what we call snapping it to the grid. Snap it so that it goes right to the pink line. If your name is a little close, just move it up a little bit, just a tiny bit. Okay, so we're going to be doing flush left, rag right. We're going to be using Baskerville. It's going to be 11 points of type, 13 points of letting. It's going to be a 20 pica wide type measure. So I'm going to zoom into this area because I can't see very well. Let me move these guys down a little bit. And I'm going to get my text tool, and I'm just going to click and drag a box. Doesn't matter exactly where or how wide, because I'm going to, after I draw the box, I'm going to hit the escape key to get to the black arrow tool. And I'm going to make the width of this 20 picas. After you make that 20 picas, go ahead and move it over so that it aligns to the pink line. Now while I'm here, I'm going to move the flush right, ragged left down below here, and I'm going to move this centered somewhere over here too. Just get them kind of in position for later on. That may move, may change, but right now that's where I'm putting them. All right. Now, I don't have my Baskerville text set from page 34. I didn't get that far on Project 1, but you guys do have that text set. So you guys would go to File and Place, and you would go find that Baskerville text document that you created for Project 1. Again, I don't have it. So I am going to have to use something else. Now, I am going to use what's called placeholder text because I don't have Baskerville, the stuff from page 34. You guys definitely need to have that stuff from page 34. But I'm going to just fill this with placeholder text for now. And sometimes I'll do this if I'm doing a rough draft for somebody and they're still writing the copy, which I hate doing. I like to have the copy because we design around what the copy says. But sometimes I have to do this. So I'm going to go to Type, and I'm going to fill with placeholder text. You guys will go to File, Place, but right now it just fills it with placeholder text. That's kind of cool. It's a lorem ipsum generator, but you guys will not have lorem ipsum. You'll have actually the words about Baskerville. Now, once you place that text in here, again, this would be words about Baskerville. It would not be lorem ipsum. We're going to make this 11/13, and we're going to make it Baskerville. Right now, by default, it might be something else. It might be Calibri or Minion Pro or whatever. So make sure you're choosing Baskerville. You can scroll up and choose Baskerville Cyrillic and use the inclined, or excuse me, the upright. Now I did notice that in the text for Garamond, I'm going to go back for just a minute. They have the last line in, the last sentence rather, of that paragraph. They have that as italics in the book. So we'll want to make sure that if there's italics used anywhere, that we go ahead and highlight those and make it italics as well. So this is going to be Garamond book italic for that last portion. Looking to see if it has, no, it does not. Looking to see if we could do the numbers similar to what they have in the book. The numbers in this Garamond, they have this what's called a proportional old style, and the book doesn't cover this, but it shows it in here, where the years for Garamond, both 1561 and 1615, they're not the same height all over. They're different heights. And how we do that is, one, we have to be using Garamond Pro for this because this is just Garamond STD. But if I use Garamond Pro, then I can highlight these numbers, go off to this flyout menu, go to Open Type, and tell it to make it old style proportional. But since this is not a professional grade font, it's not Garamond Pro, it doesn't change anything. I'm going to type 1561 in one more time. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to make this Garamond Pro. I'm going to show you the difference between regular old proportional lining, and this is what's called proportional old style. Now again, this is Garamond Pro. If I highlight this, I just change that to Garamond Pro. This year is just Garamond STD, it's not Pro. Not all fonts are created equally. So Garamond Pro has more glyphs and more options. So if you're looking in the book and you're going and you're a detail-oriented person, you'll see that both the years 1561 and 1615 are proportional old style. So that was because we're using Garamond Pro for this one. That's how I got that to mimic upper and lowercase, lowercase letters. Okay, so if you're in the book and you're wondering how they did that, it also makes your number ones look like little eyes. Little uppercase eyes. So if you're looking at the book and you're going, how did they do that? Well, it's because they're using Garamond Pro instead of Garamond Regular. Okay? So you just learned something kind of nitpicky, but that's how we do it. But it has to be usually the word Pro has to be after that font. Janice, what you got?
So, do you want us to change the numbers to the old style?
I'll give you extra credit, 1 point per each number, if you can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to do it, and then it's not changing.
Okay. So here's how we would do it. I'm going to cover that one more time. I'm not going to copy and paste 1561. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight just those numbers, and I'm going to switch that from ITC Garamond STD to Garamond Pro. Now, it's going to be Adobe Garamond Pro, but still it's going to be in the G's. So you go down to the G's for Garamond and find Adobe Garamond Pro and put in regular. Now, it will not look like this. Hold on just a second. It'll look like that initially, which is what they call lining. To get this to look old style, we click on this little flyout menu in the upper right-hand area of that character control panel. Hover over Open Type and go to Proportional Old Style, and it will change it to that old style way of looking. Okay? And again, I'll give you guys 1 point extra credit for each of these that you find and that you fix that in. years 16, 15, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go and make it proportional old style, but it has to be Garamond Pro. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So I've just mixed two typefaces. I've mixed Garamond STD and Garamond Pro just so I could get these proportional old style numbers. Brenna, you also have a question, right?
Yeah, I'm behind. I don't think, can't figure out how to, I don't think my, fonts are not looking at them.
Okay, so you're still probably, are you stuck because you haven't loaded the fonts I've supplied to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Suitcase Fusion. And because you were away the first day, and we know,
I have to do it on my computer, so
Yeah. yeah, well, yeah, give me just a second. I'm going to have to come back and show you because that's something I showed everybody on the first day class. So let me show you. We got to load up to Suitcase Fusion. Okay, so you got Suitcase Fusion open. So click on this guy right here. It's your Suitcase Fusion. There we go. There you go. Now when you go to InDesign, after it's done on your paper, you'll have those two. Okay? No problem. So well, what's the book show? Does it show? Oh, it doesn't. It only shows the Garamond. If it has them, yes. Sometimes they don't, so we'll see. Okay? The question was, I'm actually going to copy and paste this Garamond stuff. The question was, for the Baskerville text, if it has years in it, which it probably does, can we do that in proportional old style? Well, I'm going to make this Baskerville, and I'm going to type in a year, just any old year. I don't know what years it would be. I should. Does this have proportional old style? Well, let's find out. If I double click on 1792 or whatever year is in your text, my text is going to be slightly different. I apologize. I didn't have my Word documents the way you do. But if I have a number in there, I'm going to go to the flyout menu and go to Open Type and go to Proportional Old Style. And you will see it does not change. That means that Baskerville Cyrillic does not have old style non-lining characters in its glyphs. It is impossible to do it. Well, it's not impossible. We'd have to manually do it, and that is not what we're here for. If it doesn't have them, don't sweat it, okay? Usually if a typeface has the word pro at the end of it, that's almost a guarantee it has additional things like non-lining or non-lining characters like this. It's a higher level typeface. It probably costs more money, and it's got more glyphs and more options. So Garamond Pro had it, Baskerville did not. So we can't even though we might tell it to make it proportional old style, if it doesn't change, that means Baskerville, that typeface or that font we bought, does not have it. Now that was supposed to be for Baskerville 11/13. Right now I've got 12/14 or something. So make sure you set the point size and the leading. So I typed in 11. I hit the tab key. When you hit the tab key, it automatically highlights the next number. You just type over what's there, and I've got 11/13. Again, my text will look slightly different than yours because I'm using a lorem ipsum generator. Now, it did say that the setting for this needs to be flush left. Flush left means it's a line on the left. Ragged right, and it is. However, I'm noticing those wicked little hyphens again. Oh, those darn hyphens. So make sure that you select all that text and uncheck hyphenate. Okay, I've got another question. Brenna?
Am I supposed to grab them
Oh no, it's because they're they didn't really. It's confused, yeah. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that they didn't quite do this right. They really didn't do it right. Yeah. Perry has an interesting observation, which could confuse folks. On page 109, they only have Garamond set in. It says underneath, it says flush left, ragged right, and so on. They didn't necessarily make it 20 picas wide or 18 picas wide. So what we see on page 109 looks very, very different to what we're doing. And that can be very confusing when I say, oh, well, there's examples in the book. Well, the example in the book this time is fairly inaccurate. What they showed you in the book is just an example of Garamond set in just the alignments. Centered, flush left, rag right, flush right, rag left, and justified. They didn't really change the point size or the leading or the text box widths. So that can be confusing. So what you produce is going to look a little less organized than what they have in the book, because in the book, they made everything the same width, and it's not supposed to be. So good observation, Mr. Perry. All right. Now, the next setting would be Bodoni. And so I'm going to grab my text box, and I'm going to click and drag a text box. And then I'm going to hit the escape key to get the black arrow tool, which is the selection tool. And this Bodoni typeface is supposed to have an 18 pica wide box. So you want to go in the width field, which is up here in the control panel near the top. I've got it highlighted in blue up here. And you want to make that 18 picas. Then if you double click on the text box, it automatically turns into the type tool, which is really awesome. And I'm going to, I would go to File and Place to get my Word document. I suppose you could even copy and paste from the other InDesign document. I don't have those, so I'm going to fill mine with placeholder text. You guys are going to have real good text. Mine's crap. But I filled it with placeholder text. You guys, yours will actually say something about Bodoni from page 40. This is going to be Bodoni 12/16, so I'm going to get my character control panel. I'm going to find Bodoni, and assuming I used it recently, it should be near the top. It should have the STD at the end. So this is going to be Bodoni book. I want to turn off my hyphens again, and I want to make this 12 points over 16 points. And make sure the text box conforms to as much text as is in there. Now again, mine will look different than yours because I'm using placeholder text. But the settings should all be the same. It's Bodoni, flush right, rag left. Now this is flush left, rag right. So I need to select all this text, and I need to make it so that it's flush on the right, meaning it all aligns up on the right. So I'm going to use the Align tool. Here's all the alignments here. It's not really the alignment tool. There's a separate tool for align, but these are the alignment settings. And I'm going to click on the third one from the top here, the third from the left, and it aligns to the right. So this is called flush right, ragged left. Again, it's Bodoni, the typeface, Bodoni STD. It's 12/16, and it is 18 picas wide, the box that it's in. Now, for Century Expanded, I would, again, get my type tool, draw a text box. It tells us that Century is supposed to be 24 picas wide, so I'm going to use the black arrow tool. I would hit escape to get that, or go and get it in the toolbar. And I would make it the width 24 picas. It's a fairly wide box. I would double click on the box. I would go to File and Place, and I would go get my Century Expanded type the Word document. Again, I don't have it because I didn't typeset it, so I'm going to just fill with placeholder text for now. You would actually put Century Expanded, the information about that. Now this says it's supposed to be 10 points of type with 16 for the leading. So 10 over 16. And it needs to be Century Expanded. Right now I have Minion Pro or something else. So make the Century Expanded. Turn off hyphenation as always. And our alignment on this is going to be center aligned, which is the second icon in the alignment area for the paragraph alignment. So I choose that second one. Now I'm going to double check my work. Make sure it's 24 picas. Make sure it's Century Expanded. And make sure it's 10 over 16. And double click on the bottom center node so that it will expand, so it will hold all the text that's in there. Again, my paragraphs are probably a little bit longer than yours, but I just shortened that one. So yours should look similar to mine somewhat. Again, without me having exactly the same information as you do. Mine has placeholder text, but we should have something that looks somewhat similar. Again, it does look a little less organized than what's on page 109, but that's because we're using different typefaces, different widths for the boxes, and so on. So I'm going to save that. Now we're going to move on to Helvetica. My guess is you guys are probably getting better at working with text boxes, changing fonts, oops, knowing how to change point size of both the size of the type and the leading. And now we know how to set the width of the text boxes in picas by clicking on the black arrow tool and then adjusting it in the width field. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to actually stop the recording and I'm going to do a separate recording for Helvetica. And I'll let you guys take a few minutes to work on this for a second while I'm working on this video.